Surely, Mom and Dad would want to live with me more than you, Emma, who's not even able to give them grandkids. We're moving here, so you and your husband should move out already. My pregnant sister-in-law, Karen, patted her growing belly and said these words haughtily. I responded simply, all right. Although Karen seemed pleased with my easy agreement, I was secretly relieved that this might sever our ties. My name is Emma. I've been married to Scott, and we've been trying hard to treat our infertility. I used to work as a childcare worker and loved children more than anything. So when I found out after getting married that I had trouble conceiving, I was deeply shocked. I even told Scott that if he regretted marrying a woman like me, I would understand if he wanted to divorce. But Scott, being the gentle soul that he is, responded, I didn't marry you because I wanted children. I married you because I love you. If we're having trouble having a baby, let's fight this battle together. And so we agreed to start fertility treatments. I often think to myself how lucky I am to have married such an extraordinary husband. Initially, I tried to balance the treatment with my job, but it became too difficult to manage with my job shift work. I also became more sensitive during the treatment period and sometimes found myself crying at the mere sight of little children, thinking that I might never have a baby. Not wanting to burden my colleagues and remembering that Scott had once suggested that I could be a stay-at-home wife if I wanted, I decided to quit my job. So now, while going through fertility treatment, I'm a full-time housewife. Scott's younger sister Karen, who heard about our situation, has 4 children and is currently pregnant with her 5th. Just seeing a pregnant woman can sometimes be difficult for me, given our situation. But Karen, not minding this, comes to our home with her 4 children. Emma, you're a housewife now, right? Why don't you look after my kids for me? I'm really struggling with all these kids on my own. You used to be a childcare worker, right? So take care of my kids for me, will ya? She said and would leave her 4 children with me to go out for beauty treatments and manicures. When I told her it wasn't imposition, Karen would just say, in this society where people are not having enough children, I, who am raising children, am obviously more admirable, right? You, who can't even have children, should just listen to what I say. It was indeed annoying to look after someone else's kids without getting paid, even if she was my sister-in-law. Despite her grating attitude, I noticed her children actually wanted to spend time with their mother. When they asked me when their mom was coming back, it always broke my heart to respond, I wonder when. Of course I let Scott know about how Karen was leaving her children with me while she spent time on her beauty treatments. Scott, furious, confronted Karen over the phone, but Karen simply said, Emma should be happy to be around kids since she can't have any of her own. She used to be a childcare worker, so she likes kids. It's not a big deal. In response to this, Scott confronted Karen's husband, Rob, about the issue. However, Rob, agreeing with Karen's perspective, refused to help, saying, Our kids seem to like Emma, and it really helps us out. If Emma gets pregnant, we won't ask her to look after our kids anymore. I mean, we heard it might not happen, but until then, please help us out. Karen is exhausted from child rearing, and since Emma is a housewife, she should be able to help us. Scott told me that if Karen ever came over, I could send her away. However, her 4 kids would run straight to the back room without a word of greeting as soon as they set foot in our house. Karen would just say, Well then, take care of them for today, and leave her kids behind before I could even protest. One day, Karen unexpectedly came into our house. Normally, she just drops her kids off and leaves right away, so I was surprised when she asked, When are you moving to the new house? Do you have any designs or something? Scott and I were building a new duplex to live with his parents. The house is almost finished, and we were getting ready to move soon. Even knowing about my fertility issues, my in-laws have never said a single unpleasant word to me. My mother-in-law once told me, There are plenty of happy families out there without children. This was a lifesaver for me. My in-laws are getting old now, and they seem to have aches and pains all over their bodies. Before they require full-time care, we decided to live together. So, Scott decided to build a duplex. It was the first time Karen showed an interest in the duplex, and I showed her the predicted images and blueprints, somewhat intrigued. Karen hardly ever visits her parents' house, but she might be interested in the house her parents are going to live in. She asked me to confirm the number of rooms and how much sunlight it gets, so I assured her there were no issues. She also asked about the date we planned to move, and when I told her, she just said, "I see," and left, leaving her children behind. I had a bad feeling about this, but at the time, I didn't take it too seriously. Then, eventually, we decided to move into the two-family home. My in-laws moved in a few days later, and our life living with Scott and his parents began. Living together was really smooth, with no issues. Feeling blessed with such kind in-laws, one day Karen, Scott's sister, showed up out of the blue. Of course, she brought her 4 kids with her, ushered them into the new house, and without looking at her kids at all, she said to me, "Hey Emma, we need to talk." While the in-laws, who hadn't seen their grandchildren in a while, were being harried, I was forcibly taken out to the hallway. I was worrying if my in-laws, who had recently been complaining about back problems, could take care of those kids, when Karen said something outrageous. "Hey, why don't you and Scott leave this house?" What? I was taken aback by the words I hadn't anticipated, but Karen continued without caring about my reaction. "Surely, Dad and Mom would rather live with me than with you who can't even show them a grandchild. And more than anything, I'm their real daughter, connected by blood. We're moving in here, so you guys should get out soon." While stroking her growing belly, Karen said arrogantly. Karen's plan was probably to live with my in-laws and have them take care of the kids. She said, "Look, Dad and Mom are so happy to be able to take care of their grandkids," and pointed at the in-laws, who were struggling with their rowdy grandkids. I couldn't see any joy in their faces, but I knew Karen wouldn't listen no matter how much I argued. My anger at Karen for mocking my infertility had been building up, and I was extremely angry at Karen for forcing her children onto my kind in-laws. After pondering what could be done, an idea came to me, and I quietly nodded. "Okay, we'll move out." Karen happily set the schedule for when we would move out and when they would move in, and left the kids behind again, but I felt relieved thinking this was a chance to sever ties with Karen. Time passed, and the day came when Karen's family moved into the two-family house that Scott had built. As I wondered if they had moved in successfully, my phone rang. It was Karen. When I answered the phone, I heard a screech-like voice from Karen on the other side. "What the hell is this? Why haven't you moved out your stuff? There's no place for our stuff. And where did Dad and Mom go?" Scott and I and his parents had left the two-family house, but we hadn't brought all the furniture. Karen was angry about this, and I responded, "The conversation was so sudden, so we only moved out for now. Your in-laws are with us." "Outrageous!" Karen fired back words like a boomerang. "I think it's outrageous that you and your husband are moving into the house Scott built without our consent. It's also outrageous to force the kids on us like that and go out having fun when we've been telling you every time that it's hard to take care of the kids." "That's not the point right now. Can I just throw away any of the remaining furniture that I don't like?" "Feel free to do so if you're really planning to move in. But are you sure about this?" "What are you talking about?" To the irritated Karen, I broke the news. "Can you and your husband handle the mortgage for that house? It's a two-family house and quite a large one, so it's quite expensive." By that time, I had already told her numerous lies. The acceptance I had given her about moving in was also a lie. There was no way I could agree to Karen trying to take over the duplex that my husband Scott had built. It's only natural that the furniture is left at home because Scott, his parents, and I are currently on vacation at Yellowstone National Park. The truth about the house is that it was fully paid for with the savings of Scott, myself, and his parents. There's actually no mortgage, but that lie was enough to scare Karen. Scott and his parents were also aware of this strategy. When Karen demanded to talk to Scott, he switched to a mischievous look and lied the same way I had, saying that there was still a mortgage. Over the phone, Karen apparently started crying because she couldn't afford the payments. She decided to return to her previous home with her husband Rob and their children after being told by Scott that she could still back out and that we were also returning home. Upon returning to our home, which had just narrowly avoided being taken over by Karen, she immediately stormed over in a fury. "You never told us there was still a mortgage. Why did you keep it from us?" Karen yelled at us. When I casually replied, "Because you never asked," Karen's face turned even redder. "The kids were so happy, thinking this house would be ours. You've disappointed them too. That's why you can't get pregnant. You need to make up for it by properly taking care of the kids. Even though playing with the kids is no big deal, it's better than doing nothing." Listening to Karen's rant, my normally quiet mother-in-law stood up and slapped her on the cheek. Surprised that my usually calm mother-in-law had reacted so strongly, she then addressed Karen with an unexpectedly sharp tone. "You can't even handle that no big deal task of playing with the kids instead of dumping it on Emma. You were planning to move into this duplex just to force your childcare responsibilities onto us, weren't you? I was willing to help if you were struggling to raise your children alone, but who would want to assist a daughter who offloads her parenting duties onto others and acts all high and mighty? Leave this house immediately and don't ever come back." "Aren't you on my side, Mom? I'm your real daughter, aren't I?" In response to Karen's half-crying words, my always quiet father-in-law spoke up. "It's because you are our real daughter that it's so disgraceful. I even feel guilty for raising such a selfish daughter. I've heard from Scott you've been ridiculing Emma for her difficulty in having a baby. That's something no one should do." Karen glared at me fiercely. I felt a slight pity for Karen, who would be alone from now on, as I opened the front door for her. "As both your mother and father have said, please leave. I don't intend to help with your child's care anymore, so please do your best." "You people are monsters!" Karen left the house in tears, and after that, she never set foot in our house again. When Karen came to our house, Scott was out at work. He got a call from her later. It seems it was hard to understand Karen's words as she was sobbing uncontrollably, but apparently her household was already in dire financial straits. Karen had been spending money on beauty salons and manicures, while Rob had been squandering money on lottery tickets. Karen, now running out of savings, apparently thought moving into the duplex that Scott had built would save them from paying rent and utilities. When Karen asked Scott, who earns considerably more than the average income, for financial help, he couldn't forgive her for ridiculing my infertility. Scott told her that all they had to do was cut back on beauty treatments and lotto tickets, but Karen cried, saying she didn't want to. There was no way he could financially aid such an arrogant person, even if she was his real sister. Eventually, Rob ran out of money to buy lottery tickets and had to take a side job after his main work to make ends meet. Karen also lost her money to spend on beauty treatments. She used to look quite put together, but a few months after a falling out with Scott, she was almost unrecognizable. When we bumped into her, Scott had to point out, "Isn't that Karen?" before I realized it was her. Still, her kid seems lively and happy around her, and that was a good thing. And here's the miracle part of the story. I found out that I'm pregnant, with twins nonetheless. I couldn't stop my tears when the doctor told me. Scott, who had come with me, also cried out of happiness as we shared our joy together. My in-laws were also thrilled that they were finally going to have the child we'd always wanted. I haven't mentioned this to Scott, but I secretly think that being free from the stress I was getting from Karen contributed to me getting pregnant. I feel gratitude and nothing else when I think about how Scott and my in-laws chose to stand with me, not Karen, and because of that, I was blessed with 2 lives. Nowadays, I hope from the bottom of my heart that the babies in my belly will be born healthy.